After a breakup, most people fall apart. Then, they heal, and eventually, they forget the person they loved. But 10,000 years ago, heartbreak did not work like this. The pain was identical, the loss was identical, the hollow chest, the inability to eat, the way a familiar smell could collapse your entire day in under a second. All of it was the same. But what ancient humans did next, how they actually recovered, was so fundamentally different from what you are doing right now that comparing the two feels almost absurd, and the science behind why their method worked better than yours is something nobody is talking about. Here is the first thing ancient humans did that modern people almost never do, and it is the thing that made the biggest difference. They did not go home, because there was no home to go to alone. Ancient humans lived in groups of 20 to 50 people in permanent physical proximity. No separate rooms, no private apartments, no door to close between yourself and the rest of the world. The moment a bond broke and a person's emotional state collapsed, everyone around them registered it within minutes. And here is where it gets interesting. The group did not give that person space. They did the exact opposite. They physically moved closer, bodies pressed in, hands made contact. The grieving person was surrounded by the heat and breath and sound of people who were not going anywhere. Modern people call this emotional support. But what was actually happening was neurological. Physical proximity to trusted people directly reduces cortisol, the primary stress hormone that spikes after attachment loss. It quiets the threat detection loop that a broken bond triggers in the limbic system. The brain, which processes romantic rejection through the same neural pathways as physical pain, begins to regulate when it receives consistent sensory confirmation that it is not alone and not in danger. Your ancestors did not know any of this science. They knew the outcome. A broken person plus physical proximity of a trusted group equals faster recovery. That equation was tested across thousands of generations, and it worked every single time it was applied. Now compare that to what you do after a breakup. You go home, you close the door, you lie in a dark room with your phone. The average person today spends the first 72 hours after a breakup in more physical isolation than at almost any other point in their normal life. You are doing the exact opposite of what the human nervous system was built to need in that moment, and then wondering why it feels unsurvivable. The second thing ancient humans did will sound almost too simple, but the science behind it is overwhelming. They kept moving. Ancient humans walked between 8 and 16 kilometers every single day as a baseline condition of existence, not as therapy, not as a coping strategy, as life. The hunting required it. The gathering required it. The entire structure of daily survival required a body in constant motion across varied terrain, regardless of how that body felt emotionally. Here is what that movement was doing to their heartbreak without anyone understanding it or intending it. Physical exertion metabolizes cortisol. Sustained aerobic movement triggers endorphin release that directly counteracts the neurochemical signature of grief. Repeated movement patterns across familiar terrain activate the default mode network in the brain in ways that facilitate emotional processing rather than rumination. The broken ancient person walking 12 kilometers to a gathering site was not walking off their pain. Their brain was biochemically processing that pain through the movement in ways that stationary grief simply cannot access. A 2018 study published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology found that individuals who maintained consistent physical movement patterns during acute grief showed measurably faster cortisol normalization and reported significantly lower rumination scores than those who did not. Your ancestors did not read that study. They were living it every day without a choice in the matter. Now look at the modern breakup recovery pattern. The average person moves less in the first 2 weeks after a significant breakup than at any other point in their normal routine. Less movement means more cortisol. More cortisol means more anxiety, more obsessive thinking, more difficulty sleeping, more difficulty eating. The stillness that feels like self-care is actively prolonging the biological component of the pain. You are not resting, you are accumulating. The third recovery mechanism ancient humans used is the one that modern culture has replaced with something so inadequate it is almost insulting. Ancient communities had a public ritual for relational loss, not a private one, a witnessed, named, socially acknowledged transition that marked the clear line between who you were inside that bond and who you were now without it. When a bond broke in an ancient group, the community did not pretend it had not happened. They did not move on awkwardly and avoid the subject. They named it out loud. The transition was witnessed by everyone. The grieving person's new status was acknowledged as a real fact in the shared world, not just an internal experience to be processed privately. Anthropologists documenting contemporary hunter-gatherer societies consistently record this pattern. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, among the San of the Kalahari, significant relational transitions are community events. The individual's pain is not their private problem. It belongs to the group. And the group's act of naming it and witnessing it does something specific to the person carrying it. Grief that is witnessed loses internal pressure. There is substantial psychological research confirming that the act of having pain acknowledged by others reduces the subjective intensity of that pain without reducing the legitimacy of it. The ancient grieving person was not carrying their loss alone inside their chest where it compounded in silence. It was out in the open, named, real, shared. What does the modern person get instead? A situationship that ends over text, an ambiguous fade that nobody officially acknowledges, a social media status that changes and people either notice or they do not. No ritual, no naming, no witnessed transition, just a before that becomes an after with no line between them that anyone else can see. And then people wonder why closure is so hard to find. Closure was never supposed to be something you found alone. It was supposed to be something the community gave you. Now, here is the part that explains why modern heartbreak lasts dramatically longer than it biologically should. Ancient humans did not have photographs, they did not have saved voice messages, they did not have a device in their pocket that would show them, without warning, a memory from 2 years ago of a smiling person who no longer belongs to them. They did not have the algorithm that knows exactly how attached you were and surfaces that person's content at the precise moment your defenses are lowest. The brain's attachment system deactivates through a process called extinction. The neural pathways that connect a specific person to reward, safety, and comfort weaken when they stop being activated. In the ancient environment, when a bond broke, those pathways stopped being activated because the continuous sensory presence of that person was gone. No new inputs, natural extinction over weeks and months. Forgetting was not a choice, it was biology doing what biology does when the stimulus is removed. In the modern environment, the stimulus is never fully removed. Every notification, every tagged photo, every mutual friend's story, every algorithmic memory reactivates the neural pathway that is trying to go quiet. You are not healing slowly because you are weak. You are healing slowly because something is continuously reopening the wound before it can close, and you have it in your pocket and you check it 96 times a day. There is one final thing ancient humans did during heartbreak recovery that modern people have almost entirely lost access to, and it is the most counterintuitive one. They were immediately given back their function. The morning after the bond broke, survival did not pause. The hunters went hunting. The fire needed tending. The group needed every member operational because the margin for non-contribution in a pre-agricultural environment was essentially zero. The grieving person got up and came because there was no alternative, and that enforced return to purposeful skilled activity did something that weeks of passive recovery cannot do. It gave the broken person back an identity that existed completely independent of the relationship they had just lost. This is not a distraction. Modern psychology is very clear on this distinction. Distraction suppresses grief without processing it. Behavioral activation, the clinical term for returning to purposeful, skilled activity, actually accelerates grief processing while simultaneously rebuilding the self-concept that attachment loss damages. Your ancestors stumbled onto one of the most effective interventions in grief psychology, purely through the necessity of not having any other option. The modern equivalent is lying in bed for 2 weeks and calling it healing. It is not healing, it is waiting. And waiting in stillness, in isolation, surrounded by digital artifacts of the person who is gone, is about the least neurologically efficient way to move through heartbreak that a human being could design. Your ancestors did not get over heartbreak faster because they felt it less. They felt it exactly as much as you do. The nervous system running ancient grief and the nervous system running yours are the same hardware, unchanged across 300,000 years. What changed is the entire structure around that hardware. The proximity was replaced by isolation. The movement was replaced by stillness. The witnessed public transition was replaced by a text message or a slow fade. The enforced return to purposeful work was replaced by an indefinite leave of absence from your own life. The natural extinction of neural pathways was replaced by an algorithm designed to keep those pathways firing indefinitely. You are not bad at heartbreak. You are using the wrong tools, and the right ones have been sitting in your biology, waiting for 300,000 years.